for Sunday, September 26, 2021 to preschool Sunday school. And we're going to start with the Wonder Cube today. It may have shrunk from the last time you saw it. Sometimes it gets big, sometimes it gets small. But our question today is, I wonder if you could be any character in the Bible story, what character would you be and why? So think about who in the story you would want to be and why. And we are talking about Joseph again this week and this month. Do you remember what Joseph's brothers did? In our first story, they were jealous of Joseph because he had the fancy robe and his father loved him more than all the other brothers because he was so good at interpreting dreams and had other talents. But the brothers were jealous, so they ended up selling him away to Egypt and to slavery. So sometimes it can be hard to understand why people do what they do. Maybe Joseph wondered why his brothers had been so mean to him. When we try to understand how someone else feels, that can make us feel compassion for others. That means kindness, caring for others. So maybe Joseph could forgive his brothers because he understood how they must have felt. So in our story today, forgiveness begins for Joseph and his brothers. So our faith word again is reconciliation this month, again to bring peace between persons who have disagreed. So they had disagreements in the past, but they can get past them with forgiveness. So the 7 years of plenty and the 7 years of famine arrived just as Pharaoh's dream had predicted. Joseph took good care of the grain during these years of plenty, so the Egyptian people had food to eat during the 7 years of famine. But Egypt was not the only country affected by the drought. Canaan, where Joseph's father and brothers lived, also had a famine. So Jacob sent his sons to Egypt to buy food so that they would not starve to death. When the brothers arrived in Egypt, they were taken to their brother Joseph to request food, although of course they did not know it was him. It had been many years since the brothers had seen Joseph, and they did not recognize him. But Joseph did recognize his brothers. Joseph devised a plan to trick his brothers and get even for selling him. Joseph wanted them to feel remorse for what they had done to him. Joseph finally decided, though, he could not trick his brothers any longer and revealed himself to his brothers. He was so overcome by emotion that he had to hide his tears. Joseph forgave his brothers and wanted to be reconciled with them and his father. So Joseph sent his brothers back to Canaan one last time. They returned with their father and the rest of the family to make Egypt their home. The family was reunited. Now, forgiveness can take a long time. It may take years to work through the process of reconciling. But in the story of Joseph and his brothers, reconciliation was eventually achieved because both sides, both the brothers and Joseph, asked for and gave forgiveness. Now, I'd like to share the Bible story for you today from my first Read Aloud Bible about the brothers being reunited. And you can see in the picture all the brothers are there and Joseph. Now, Joseph's brothers had to travel to Egypt to buy corn and grain. They did not know that the man in charge was Joseph. Joseph pretended to be angry with them. Then he said, "Don't be frightened. It's me, Joseph. I will take care of you. God brought me here to save everyone. Come and live in Egypt with me." And then our second Bible verse is from the Children's Bible in 365 Stories. And these are from Genesis chapters 42 all the way through 46. We may not read all of that today, but those are the chapters that this story is coming from. 7 years of wonderful harvest brought huge quantities of grain. Joseph arranged for it to be stored all over the country of Egypt. But before the 7 years were up, the new storehouses were so full that even Joseph had lost count of how much grain they actually held. Then came the lean and hungry years, where no crops would grow. Joseph was busier than ever, selling the grain and seeing that it was fairly shared. Soon people living in nearby countries who were also hit hard by the famine heard that there was grain to be had in Egypt. they traveled to Joseph to ask if they too could buy grain to take home to their own lands. Back in the land of Canaan, Jacob and his sons were hungry. "I hear that they have grain to sell in Egypt," Jacob told his sons. "Go there and buy some for us." All the brothers set out except for Benjamin. Jacob could not bear to be parted from him, for he was the only remaining child of Rachel, the wife that he loved so dearly. As soon as the 10 strangers were ushered into the presence of Joseph, he recognized them as his brothers. But they had no idea who he was. They never expected their brother to be alive, let alone to be the governor of all of Egypt. Besides, he was dressed like an Egyptian. "Where do you come from?" Joseph asked sternly. He spoke in the Egyptian language, and a servant translated all that was said. "From Canaan," they answered. "We have come to buy grain." "I don't believe a word of it," Joseph said. "I think you are a bunch of spies, come to find out what is going on here." "We are honest men," they protested. "Then tell me all about yourselves," Joseph insisted. "There were 12 of us, all brothers," they began. "But one brother is dead, and the youngest is so dear to his father that he would not let him come with us." Joseph felt strange when he heard himself described as dead, but he did not let his feelings show. "Prove that you are innocent by bringing that youngest brother with you next time you come," he ordered. "I am going to keep one of you here as a hostage until you return." Simeon was taken away and put into prison. The others were allowed to go back to Canaan with sacks full of grain. When they arrived home and opened the sacks, they were horrified to find their own bags of money lying on top of the grain. They had been given back all that they had paid. "Now we'll be accused of being thieves as well as spies," they cried. They did not know that Joseph had told his servants to put the money there. He was trying to find out what kind of men those cruel brothers had turned out to be. So, little by little, their supply of Egyptian grain ran out, and soon Jacob and his large family were hungry again. "You must go back to Egypt to buy more," Jacob told his sons. "Only if we can take Benjamin with us," they insisted. "Never," Jacob cried. "Joseph is dead, Simeon's in prison, and now you want to take Benjamin away? We shall all be put to death as spies if we don't," the brothers reasoned. Then Judah, the one who had suggested selling Joseph as a slave so many years before, spoke up. "I promise in my life to take care of Benjamin," he said to Jacob. "I will be responsible for him." Sadly and reluctantly, Jacob agreed and watched them all leave for Egypt. To their great relief, they were kindly welcomed and shown to Joseph's house. When, after so long, Joseph saw his own brother Benjamin, he could hardly hold back his tears of joy. He then ordered Simeon to be released and invited them all to dinner. When they came in nervously to sit at the table, they were amazed to find that they had been placed in exact order of age. How could anyone have known? Benjamin was served with extra large helpings on Joseph's orders. The brothers were full of thankfulness and relief. Their troubles seemed to be over. Soon they would all be safely on their way home with fresh supplies of grain. A cheerful and relaxed band of brothers took the return route to Canaan. All was well and Benjamin was safe. Suddenly, out of the blue, they saw a distant horseman speeding towards them. As he came nearer, they recognized with sinking hearts he was a servant of the governor of Egypt. "How dare you steal my master's silver cup?" he shouted as he drew level with them. "We don't know what you mean," they protested. "We have stolen nothing. If any one of us has the cup, you can put him to death and keep the rest of us as slaves." Roughly, the servants searched their luggage and opened their sacks of grain. The last sack he opened was Benjamin's, and there, glinting in the sun, nestled the precious cup. The brothers were horror-struck. They reloaded their donkeys and silently followed the servant back to Joseph. They had not guessed that all this had happened was part of Joseph's plan to find out what kind of people they really were. When he had heard the servant's report, Joseph pronounced, "None but the guilty man shall be my slave." Then Judah stepped bravely forward. "If you keep Benjamin, my father will die of grief. Please keep me instead." Joseph could hardly believe his ears. His brothers were very different now from the heartless gang who had sold him as a slave and made his father believe he was dead. There were tears in his eyes. He could not keep the truth from them any longer. "Go out of the room," he told the servants. Then he spoke to his brothers for the first time in their own language. "I am Joseph," he told them, "your long-lost brother." The brothers were terrified when the truth at last sank in. The great governor of Egypt was none other than the brother they had treated so badly many years before. Now he would make them pay for it. But instead, Joseph told them to come close to him. Then he hugged and kissed them all in turn, beginning with Benjamin. "Don't blame yourselves for what you did," he said kindly. "God had a plan when he brought me here. I have been able to save many lives. Now you must hurry back to fetch our father and all your families. There are still 5 more years of famine to come. I will see you settled in Goshen, where the pasture is good for your flocks." Then at last there was laughter and talking and great excitement. The inquisitive servants were listening and gossiped to everyone. The good news reached the ears of the king himself. Soon the brothers set off for home. "Joseph is still alive," they called out to Jacob, "and he is governor of all Egypt." Old Jacob would not believe them until he saw the wonderful presents that Joseph had sent for him. Then the whole family packed up their tents and all their belongings. They gathered their flocks and herds together and began the slow journey to Egypt to settle in the land that Joseph was preparing for them. And our activity today is coin rubbings. This is something you may or may not have done before, but when you put a silver coin underneath a paper and you use a crayon or a pencil to go over it, it'll show the impression of the coin. So you can use what you might have at home, quarters or nickels or dimes, and you can color over those with your own crayons to show the different coins that may have been in the sack. These were the silver pieces that Joseph put back in for his brothers. He didn't want his brothers to starve, so he returned their money to them. And you can rub across with a crayon in different colors, and then you can color the page in the bag, whatever color that you want to use. I've used the black crayon. I'm going to use the green crayon here. See what we get. A little bit more. And you guys are much better at coloring than I am, so I'm sure you will do well with this and get some nice rounder circles to come through on the page. But anyway, this is something kind of fun you can use, and maybe a pencil might work better than a crayon. But whatever you have at home, colored pencils or crayons, you can use that to color through and show the coins that were in the sack that Joseph put back for his brothers. And then we'll end today with a prayer. In today's Bible story, Joseph's brothers came to Egypt to get food, and they brought with them silver to give as a gift. Dear God, Joseph forgave his brothers. Help us to forgive our brothers and others that we have disagreements with as well. Amen.